think I'm gonna say whoever is here, we can start. But well, because it's it is quarter to. No, the one gentleman's here, the other gentleman's here. So I am waiting for a fourth person, I think, but maybe they're running late as well. Yes, yes. Yes, I'm waiting for a gentleman called Giulio Genti, but it doesn't look like he's...
Otherwise it means it's more time for us.
Sorry, say that again.
Otherwise it means that's more time for us.
Yes, a bit more time for you. Yeah, absolutely. Are we good to start?
Hello.
Hi.
I'm Francesca Carmagnola.
Okay. I had
on behalf of Giulio Genti. Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Okay. So yes, we can take a seat. Right.
My eyeglasses.
I don't think we have an extra chair. Oh yes, there we are. Okay. Yeah, just sit at the middle.
Okay.
Is that? Are you okay there?
Yeah. I thought you would want to sit in there.
Oh, go on then.
To
I'll sit
regulate
in
the
the
room.
middle.
Getting some balance.
Yes. I thought we were going to do boy, girl, but that's all right. Right. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for coming so quickly to the next session. We're continuing with education and training. I'm the moderator. My name is Themis Halvantzi-Stringer, and we have 4 excellent presenters next. I won't keep you very long. I won't say anything else. I will pass the speech to Ryan Smith, who is the first person. And can you give us a couple of minutes of information about yourself first, Ryan, before you start with your presentation? Thank you.
There we go. No. How's that? There we go. That's better. Well, actually, my slides have a little bit about me, so if I can use those, that would be good. Okay. I'm going to just jump in. Okay. Thanks for coming along. I know it's maybe been a bit of a long day. Everybody's sort of maybe had something sweet, and so we're starting to get a bit of a sugar crash. So thank you for turning up. Thanks for being here. It's very exciting to be here, actually. I'm from Australia. It's about 20 hours away, so it's not across the road. And it's taken me a bit of time to get here, so I'm very excited about being here, and thank you for joining us today. Now, I don't want to turn this into the Ryan show, but if you do want to know a little bit about me, I'm going to jump right in and sort of maybe give you a little bit of background. Firstly, what I would like to do is use this clicker. There we go. What I would like to do is firstly acknowledge the Indigenous people from the place where I work, which is in Melbourne, called Naarm. The Wurundjeri Woiwurrung people are the traditional owners. And I also want to pay respect to all the disability leaders and activists and agitators that have come before me today. Disability rights have been hard fought, and I think it's just the correct thing to do to acknowledge those people. I do want to say also that talking about disability can be a little bit uncomfortable. Some people don't like to think about it, don't like to talk about it. In fact, we spend most of our lives not thinking about the things that disability is about, right? So disability is about frailty, it's about aging, it's about all of those diseases, it's all about all of those uncomfortable things that we don't like to think about. But today, if we think about it and we talk about it, there's going to be some real benefits, especially in the tourism industry. I'm the founder of the Access Agency. I'm a qualified access consultant. I spent a year to get qualified in access consultancy, and I work specifically in the visitor economy, which is a fancy way of saying tourism. I work specifically in Australia, and I have a fondness for birds. I'm an ex-graphic designer, so I can pretty much tell any font anywhere from a distance. And my disability is the least interesting thing about me. I'm a whole round person, and this wheelchair is just a really simple way that I move around the world, just like you use your legs to move around the world, right? So, moving along. I used to be young. That was quite some time ago now. But my father is from England. My mother is from New Zealand. If you can't see me, I'm a 50-year-old white male in a wheelchair. But travel is in my blood. It's in my DNA. It always has been. And so I've always been a very passionate traveller. Pardon me. And I'm using this clicker the wrong way again. There we go. Right, today we're talking about a project which is a self-assessment manual for Parks Victoria. Now, Parks Victoria is in Victoria in Australia. It's the second southernmost state. And this is basically a guideline. It's an organic document that grows in time, that will evolve. But it's basically a document that will enable parks rangers and people who work in the national parks to do self-assessments on their parks to see how they match up against standards, but also how they match up against best practice in universal design. How do they make parks more inclusive for everybody? It ran for 6 months. It was a 6-month project. There was an existing manual that was completely revamped and rethought from the point of view of the visitor experience. And it was very much focused on park rangers. Now, I don't know if anybody here knows any park rangers, but most of the time what they're doing is telling people to pick up litter, they're managing pests, they're managing fire, they're doing all of these things around land management, and they don't necessarily have a visitor economy mentality. So they don't necessarily think about tourism. They think about managing the park, right? So it was really important that we got the tone right for these people. It's for rangers, and it was used and piloted across 4 different parks, and it was adapted and evolved from there. It's in PDF and print, and it's available to all park rangers. It's been shortlisted for a Project Zero prize, which we're very proud about. And I should say now that the commissioners of this work, so I produced the work, the people that allowed that to happen were Simon Gray from Parks Victoria, and Joe Pringle too from Parks Victoria. So they're the people that organised for this work to be done. I was just lucky enough to pick up the project and do the work. Oh, this thing. Right. So as I said, the project was rolled out across 6 months. We built out a really theoretical base to work from, and we had to make sure that it was ready for park rangers. Now, about Parks Victoria, they're responsible for nearly 20% of the entire state. So nearly 20% of the entire state is parks. 70% of the coastline is parks. So it is a huge amount of space, a huge amount of area. As I said before, they manage fire control, land management. They have tourism operators working on their parklands. And they have a very, very strong reputation for accessibility and inclusive work in doing things like universal design, bringing universal design principles into tourism in national parks. Now, national parks, I don't know if you've been to, an advanced urban national park where you might have a visitor centre, you'll have toilet facilities, you'll have potentially parking and public transport, and some of the other more rural areas will have accommodation. They'll have hard-roofed accommodation. They may have 3 or 4 different types of accommodation, tent camping grounds, all sorts of things, bathrooms, toilets, the whole lot, right? So when we talk about parks, it's not just the natural spaces. There is a lot around the built environment in there as well. And they have a reputation, or at least a byline that they use, which is healthy parks, healthy people. which I think is a really lovely way to sort of explain the importance of nature and how that can be so regenerative for us. So as I said before, they have a very strong reputation for doing inclusive and accessible work in the past. These tents on the left-hand side are called Discovery tents. They are probably about 30 minutes from Melbourne. One of these, there might be 15 of them. One of these has been set up with power and a high bedding setting. And so that's more designed for people with low mobility. And what they actually found when they put that in place is that it wasn't actually people in wheelchairs that used that facility. It was actually people who needed CPAP breathing machines at night. So again, you know, you make something that's inclusive and accessible, and sometimes you're surprised by who actually uses it. More often than not, if you design with universal design, what you're going to find is everybody can use it. Right? They also do a lot of work around inclusive on-water sports. So there are different ways to get on water with Parks Victoria. They, as I said before, they have 70% of the coastline, and so they have different ways to get onto watercraft, also onto boats, onto kayaks, those sorts of things. So there's a really inclusive sort of history in that work. Now, they do have a lot of accessibility information on their parks, and the interesting thing for me about this is it's actually it's co-created with people with disabilities, but it's also in two places. And what I mean by that is, if you Google, I want to go to this particular park, you will have a list on that page of the accessibility information for that park. But it's also aggregated into one page. So if you say you want a particular feature about accessibility in a park, then you can scan through that page and find what features are available right across the state. So, back to the guide. What we wanted to do was talk to park rangers and really to get them to understand what accessibility fundamentals were. Because remember, these people look after, you know, kangaroos and bushfires and all sorts of things, right? So they don't have that mentality about inclusivity and accessibility. So what we really wanted to do is make sure that we covered off those accessibility elements. And what we did is we broke it down into that visitor economy side of things. So we tried to put it in plain language. We tried to use diagrams and get it across really clearly. And then the second part, section B, was around self-assessment. So this is basically a massive checklist. So you give it to a park ranger and they go through and they measure against some unified standards which we created, which allow each of the parks to really benchmark against one another. So that consistency of criteria around benchmarking is absolutely crucial, because when they go back and do that again, they're using the same measurement tools. And then every other park, there's been more than 50 parks now that have been using this manual. Each park that gets added to it is using the same criteria. So we get to benchmark and use consistent data. The really important thing about the second part, that massive checklist, if you want to sort of simplify it, we really wanted the park rangers to understand the visitor experience. So the first part of it was, what do I do when I go to a park when I'm not deeply involved and I'm not really doing a lot there, but what are the basic things do I need? What are the first things that I need? So how do I orient and get around and arrive? So that's looking at the basic things like parking, public transport, pathways, those sort of rudimentary fundamental things. And then the second step is, how do we get people, or how do we understand how people do that second thing? How do they stay in comfort for a little bit longer than that first segment? So what is it about toilets? What is it about information shelters or mapping, barbecues, even accommodation? And then the last thing was really pushing it and saying, okay, if we've got people with access needs and people with disabilities arriving, how do we really get them to really involve themselves? How do we get them out on a boat? How do we get them bird watching or fishing, or really involving themselves and participating in a really meaningful way? So we started off and we thought, right, well, we really need to use diagrams. It was really important that we use diagrams, and it gives them the opportunity to understand what is that barrier, what is that rudimentary accessibility component, and what does it mean. And we used a table to show sort of the crucial, data points, heights and widths and depths and things like that. But we also used really simple language to sort of say, why is it important? Why is it important that a gradient is not really steep? Well, it's for people with mobility devices, right? Why is it important that a handrail is at a particular height? Well, you need to make sure that everybody can use it, that it's usable and it's universally designed. And we keep using this word universally designed. And what I like to sort of say when I talk about it is, my niece, she's 11 years old, right? And she's the same height as me. And so we see the world from the same height. We also, when I have some arthritis in my hand, our grip strength, the way we grip things, is roughly with the same strength, right? And my reach range is roughly the same as hers. Now, I'm 51, and she's 11. But if you design a space that works for me, it works for her, it works for everybody, right? So that's when we start using this universal design principles. So that's why it was really important to sort of lay those foundations and really talk about those key accessibility elements. And what are they? There's 15 of them there. I'm not going to read them all out to you, but some of them around the built environment, which is, I can say, legislated from an accessibility point of view. So there are laws in place for accessibility to be in that built environment. And then there's other areas in national parks which aren't covered by legislation and aren't covered by... they are covered by the Disability Discrimination Act, but they're not covered by the Australian standards on the built environment. So again, using diagrams, using clear language, using clear metrics so everyone can understand. You can just flick through the pages and go, right, okay, so that's what a handrail needs to be, and that's why. That's why it needs to be that way. So the second part of this, after we've educated all of the park rangers around accessibility basics, right, is to actually get them out into the field. Now, out into the field with a checklist gives them the opportunity to really see what are those barriers. And quite often, they're barriers that they have never ever noticed before. They will start to measure things, they'll start to look at things through that inclusive design and that universal design lens, as opposed to maybe before they might not have. So part one, big checklist there, lots of criteria. Is the visitor centre connected to the accessible path of travel? Quite often we see assets in national parks just built completely accessible from a universal design point of view, but actually not connected to pathways. Next time you're in a park, have a look at the path and then have a look at the picnic grounds or the barbecue barbecue area, and see if it's actually connected by path, because quite often it's not. So there were some things around this, around connectivity, certainly around basics and fundamentals around accessibility, particularly when it came to the kind of rudimentary connectivity. And the second part, as I said before, so how do people arrive, orient and get around? So we monitored and had a look at things like, is there tactile mapping involved? Is there auditive or sensory elements around the mapping that can be used to orient people and to navigate people in the space? Are there rather rudimentary sort of trip hazards in place? Are they removed on a common basis? Tree branches fall. Are they removed at a regular period? Vertical barriers, surfaces, things like splinters. You're often dealing with wood in the natural environment. So do handrails have splinters? All those sorts of things. For me, it was more like, is this area usable? Like, usability in a digital sense has all of these principles around it. Now, bringing those into the physical space. So the rangers responded really well. There was a lot of use. This has been used, as I said before, in 50 different parks. It's been used by 200 different rangers. It is providing real guidance on how to improve parks as well, so they can do an assessment and understand where they are from an accessibility or an inclusive design point of view. So that can provide them great information for planning future works, but it also allows them to benchmark consistently against different parks in the state as well. So since the guide has been put together, the sensory garden has opened in Sierre, which is around people with sensory sensitivities. So there's a lot of tactile elements there. There's a lot of planting that's done with certain flowers that have particular smells and particular colours. There's a lot of tactile elements here for people with sensory sensitivities. The one up in the left is the installation of a new sort of fishing area and lookout that sits across the water. There's been dramatic improvement and real uptake internally as a culture. There's a lot of those rangers, as I said before, didn't really think about accessibility, didn't really have that lens, if you like. And now, since this has been used as one of the pillars in their education or curriculum, I suppose you would call it, in accessibility, their workplace is now instilling that importance around the visitor economy on one hand, but also accessibility and inclusive design on another. That's Simon Gray there, and an opening of another pathway there. So it's been really well received. As I said before, there's been a great uptake of this. The culture within the business and the organisation is really kind of uplifted, and there's a lot more inclusive work being done. Thanks.
Great. Thank you very much, Ryan. And what I really took out of your presentation was the use of universal design and how important that is for accessibility for all sorts of different levels. I think that's a very, very brilliant adaptation to the inclusion in the national parks. And thank you for the second time for keeping absolutely to the minute in your presentation. That was fantastic. Thank you very much. So may we have the second speaker, please? Is that? Right, so this is Marco.
Hello, I'm Marco. I'm Marco van Leeuwen, and I work for Breda University of Applied Sciences, which is in the south of the Netherlands. And I'm here today to tell you a little bit about projects that we do about accessible tourism and leisure. Always together with people with disabilities, with experienced experts and students. I do many of those projects together with Peter Horster, my colleague, who is also present here today. The main reason that we want everybody to be able to enjoy tourism, and obviously to the crowd here, this needs not to be explained, but sometimes to tourism professionals, the people who are not here, not attending these kinds of conferences, or even tourism students, is that tourism, recreation, leisure events, we tend to see those as connected, are very beneficial. Because they offer context for exploring your interests, for self-development, personal growth, improving your mental health, meeting new people, forging social bonds, and all those things. And maybe most importantly, they're also very fun. And if something is that important and that beneficial, then I would say obviously you want everybody else to be able to enjoy that. Not just people who are able-bodied, who have sufficient funds, who have these things in their neighborhood, but everybody else. This particular frame of mind also speaks from the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which in several articles also highlights the right to leisure, to rest, to cultural participation. Many of those things also occur in a tourism context. But it's not necessarily obviously possible and available for everybody to participate in that, as obviously everybody here knows. There's people with disabilities, physical, mental, sensory disabilities. people might also have a lack of money, or some of the necessary facilities, destinations, and fun things to do might not be in the neighborhood. Or people might have a lack of knowledge, inability to access information, or the opportunity to access the right kinds of social networks to appreciate all those things. And what we tend to see in a lot of our work with people with disabilities is that several of these things can occur at the same time. So the people with disabilities, the experience experts that we work with, they tend to give back to us, it's not just my physical disability or intellectual disability, but it's also difficult for me because I cannot afford to go to this destination. I need someone to go with me, and I've already asked my mother to come with me 2 or 3 times, so I don't want to bother her again, right? So it can be a stack of different issues that people with disabilities might need to deal with. There are many solutions that are already available, right? So many of them are being discussed at this conference. Several of them are also available at the stands outside. Here's a small example from our region. The Efteling is a large theme park in the south of the Netherlands, and they also have several initiatives by which they try to make their theme park, more accessible to people with disabilities. So to the right on the screen you see an image of a map, of a park map, with a legend to the side, with lots of information about accessibility, whether or not it's accessible for people in a wheelchair or people with various disabilities, if there are specific guidelines you need to follow, if you need specific assistance to get in. All of that is obviously fantastic. It's great that these things are being developed and adopted in the leisure and tourism sectors. Not universally so, but of course we need to applaud every initiative to that end. But yeah, these solutions don't necessarily work for everyone, because a year and a half ago I went to this theme park together with a group of people with a disability, so experience experts. We had people with several different kinds of disabilities. So all of them belong to an organization called LFB. It's an advocacy organization for people with a mild intellectual disability, but some of them also had sensory disabilities. We had a guy with us in an electric wheelchair. So, but the most important and most telling example was when we had just entered the park and we were trying to figure out, okay, where to go and what to do. So we went up to the park map, and then the experienced expert stood in front of that and said, yeah, it looks great, but this doesn't help me, right? So it was just too complex, there was just too much information, it was not easy to see where to go from here. So even if there is something that is being done, fantastic obviously, but doesn't necessarily work for everyone. These kinds of nuances are the kinds of things that we try to zoom in on in our projects together with experienced experts and students. And in these processes, what we tend to see is a sequence of attitudes. So empathy tends to be something that is noted as being very important. Empathy with people who are in a different situation and wanting to understand. Empathy is posited within a spectrum, ranging from sympathy via empathy to compassion. Sympathy is when you feel sorry for someone in a different situation. So not very helpful. It is something in the sense that it shows the willingness of someone to look beyond his or her own position, for instance, towards someone with a disability, but it's not a very helpful or respectful attitude. Empathy is better. That's imagining what it must be like for someone to be in a particular position, but the problem there is obviously that if you're not in that particular position, you're not in that wheelchair, you don't have that intellectual disability or what have you, you cannot know exactly all the details, all the nuances of what that is like. And if you then from that position of relative ignorance try to design solutions, you're going to miss a lot, right? So compassion, we have found, is the most helpful attitude, in the sense that you don't pretend to know everything there is to know through empathy, but you're open to ask. And that leads to co-creation, working together in an equal partnership. And that's what we always do. We do projects with experienced experts, with students, and it's intended to create that openness towards one another and figuring stuff out together. So why do we do this? Well, we believe that changing the tourism and leisure sectors from our modest positions in our university is not possible. But what we can do is plant the seeds amongst the next generation of tourism and leisure professionals. So what we have set out to do is we want to give every student in our programs, and also our colleagues, our lecturers and researcher colleagues, at least one experience in their study career. So we want to do, we want to help each and every one of these people to have at least one experience, one project, one workshop with experienced experts focusing on disabilities and improving situations for this target group. It's like a kind of exposure therapy, if you will, trying to normalize this way of working, this openness. Don't be afraid to ask, just do it together. So the learning journey as such is depicted on the screen. So if we consider that tourism and leisure are closely correlated with well-being and quality of life, it is the right thing to do. It is the ethical or moral thing to do to ensure access for everyone. And in order to do that, we need to get these students, these tourism professionals of the future, to break out of their own bubble, to consider possibilities of experiencing tourism opportunities that lie beyond their own field of vision, because they are going to be creating the tourism opportunities for everyone in the future. And this is why we do projects, co-creative design research with experienced experts and students. So I have several examples that I want to mention. So as I said, we focus on tourism, leisure, events. For us, these fields are connected. These are also things that our university is specialized in. So it's a specialized university in leisure, tourism, hospitality, hotel, gaming, all the things that make life fun, basically. So we also tend to see our obligation to address these fields. So what we often do is co-create guest lectures and workshops. Co-creation with experienced experts and students from the very beginning of the design phase to through the designing the methodology, through collecting data and doing stuff together, designing the interaction and evaluating afterwards. So we also do, shall we say, disability-focused customer journey scans of our own facilities, so our own university buildings, together with experienced experts and students, just to get students to experience what that is like and also to see what the potential obstacles and issues might be. We do a lot of visitor journey research, so we go through to museums. Interesting thing about museums is that they tend to be designed, at least in the Netherlands, for a particular audience. So many museums are focused on attracting a more, shall we say, a more well-educated target audience. That they also tend to be a bit older, interested in particular topics. And the target group of experienced experts and students that we take to these museums are not that. So we see very interesting things. And sometimes beautiful things have been designed, beautiful interactive displays, lots of information. But then we get in the museum with experienced experts and they start pushing buttons and everything turns on at the same time. And it just creates a cacophony of sound and light. And the exact opposite of what you then want for people who are, shall we say, on the neurodiverse spectrum. So yeah, with the best intentions, lots of museums do really beautiful stuff, but not necessarily very accessible. Also, for instance, in terms of the complexity of information in descriptions. So one point is one of the museums that we went to had well the regular highbrow descriptions, you know, basically for art historians, and an audio tour for kids. But then we went there with people with disabilities, with a mild cognitive disability, and they say, okay, I tried the audio tour for the kids, but I'm not a kid, I'm not a child, I'm an adult, and I don't really like to play these kiddie games, right? So they fall in between the cracks and don't really fit in. We also go on city tours, and those are a little bit different because museums are basically like controlled environments. So the museum can design what happens there. The city is much more complex, much bigger, and also much more challenging and much more unpredictable. One challenge that we got here is we did a cycle tour, but not all of our experienced experts could actually ride a bicycle. Tried to rent one, a tricycle, but you couldn't rent one for one day, yes, for a month, and you needed to go through the healthcare system. So they are available, but not accessible. Well, I also mentioned theme parks, so these are some groups of people with whom we went to theme parks. I already shared the anecdote there. Also sports parks, right? Sports parks for regular sports, so sports clubs. And the problem there is that many of those sports clubs are underfunded or are dependent on whatever the funding priorities of municipalities are, which means that many of these facilities are also outdated and not really up to date for the needs of people with disabilities. An interesting project that we did recently had to do with people with hearing disabilities. So we went to a zoo, to the gorilla feeding presentation. So that's to the picture on the right, the arena where people can watch that presentation. The picture on the left are the devices that we used to do physiological measurements, so measurements of emotional agitation. And our hypothesis was that if you can see what is happening but you cannot hear it, or you cannot hear the important information that's being shared, you will have a different emotional visitor or spectator journey than people who can hear. So we learned a lot, especially in terms of methodological design, because many of these measurement devices are not adapted also to people who do not fit into the quote-unquote normal box. And a big project that is currently still ongoing has to do with accessibility and employability. So especially in an event context. So I organized a World Leisure Field School connected to the World Leisure Congress in August. People from all over the world came here, and together with experienced experts, we went all around Breda, the city where we are located, to access or to assess accessibility. And it was really a co-creative project in that sense. The students, the international students already did preparatory assignments, so best practice examples from their own context. We did accessibility scans, we had data processing sessions and dialogues after each visit, so experienced experts and students together, sometimes also with the owners of the facility that we went to, just to see what we could learn. The students presented also on the Congress, and I'm using these insights in a larger research project. Why? Because when I started organizing this field school, it turned out that it was going to be very expensive, because the Netherlands is a very expensive country. So I found, together with someone else, a funding for a larger project. It needed to be about business events, but it did allow me to pay a fair wage also to the experienced experts, to hire them for their expertise. So this is going to lead to a whole portfolio of things that are going to lead to improved accessibility of business events. So these are some of the locations that we went to. We went to a youth culture and pop-up event venue. We went to a museum, which is more traditional high culture. We did an accessibility walking tour in the city. And we also took a critical eye to our own Congress. Now, some of the tools we use are also adapted together with the experienced experts. So, for instance, with people with a mild cognitive disability, we designed this system based on photo voice. So we take pictures of critical incidents and issues, and then use a system of smileys to indicate to what extent it was a positive or a negative interaction. And we have these co-designed sheets where we collectively can think about improvements. Also with the students from our own programs, we also we want to do student surveys to test them before a project and after a project to see whether they've whether they've evolved from unconscious incompetence to conscious incompetence and hopefully beyond. Now, I mentioned that the people visiting this particular Congress, they know about the importance of creating accessibility and designing for that, right? But it's the people, the tourism professionals who are not here that we need to try and convince. And that means that we're going to have to try and convince them to move on a spectrum. If you look at this spectrum in terms of what a tourism experience requires in terms of design, we have heard from tourism and leisure professionals that they just focus on their core audience. They say, we have a core audience, we know who that is, and that's who we want to secure the best possible experience for. That's business as usual. On the other side of that spectrum is you could invest in a full co-design process together with experienced experts to redesign, to adapt to universal design principles. This experience, this tourism experience, well, we need to meet them somewhere halfway, right? Because many tourism and leisure professionals are now on the left. We want to get them more to the right, but we have to convince them. This also goes for employment of people with disabilities. We heard literally, one more slide after this. We heard literally from event organizers is everything moves on a grid, everything is very tightly planned, and if we have people with disabilities, things will take longer, and then we have sort of an avalanche of problems. At that moment, we were there with experienced experts, and we did sort of an impromptu redesign session. Okay, but how can we redesign also the value proposition for visitors, so that this super tight schedule is maybe less important, but the improved quality of the experience that also people with disabilities with their own talents can offer is it maybe more interesting? And I think maybe this morning we had something of that variety where we had a bit of a delay, and then, well, we adapted, right? We're still here. Final slide. Whatever we do, whatever from the designers or organizers or managers' perspective, there's always the human factor of the participant, of people visiting your event, visiting your destination. You can try to create awareness, but the question is, how far can you go in that? Again, it needs to be a negotiation where the quality of the experience and the interaction is secured for everyone. It's a process, and with our projects, we try to contribute to that. That was it.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Marco. And I think that overall people are, even though there are many issues, people overall are thinking about how things should change, because it's becoming imperative for everybody, not just for people with disabilities, but for people aging, different segments of the population. So there are all sorts of issues that need to be addressed, and I think even people in tourism are starting to realize that. So thank you for those comments. I think next is, sorry, can I have the control? Pierre, thank you very much. Pierre, thank you.
Can I have the
yes.
remote? Yeah. Thank you. So, hi everyone. Buongiorno a tutti. Sorry, non parlo più italiano, parlo inglese più facile, ok? Scusi. Hi everyone. I'm really pleased to be here. I'm Pierre from Switzerland, so I'm really near from here, something like 2.5 hours by car. So it's, I live not far from Torino. Who I am? Oh, it's a long story. First, I used to be a lawyer and an anthropologist, and I am now a professor at University of Applied Science, Western Switzerland, in social work faculty. But I am also in contact with the tourism faculty, and I am the one who introduced 15 years ago the first lecture in accessible tourism in the tourism faculty. I have a long story of disability movement and disability experiment. You can see my hair shows that I am physically old, but in my mind I'm still young, okay? And my expertise are in the field of human rights first, and then in the field of disability or social anthropology. It means that I'm especially concerned in how people, how cultures, how regions of the world, how ethnic are considering what is disability. And this shows us that there are so many differences in how to consider disability in the world that it's almost impossible to have a common definition of what is disability. That's not for that I came. I came to present a really small study that we did with my colleague Benjamin Hanschen, who is a scientific assistant at the tourism faculty in the same university. And this small study just had the objective of trying to see if it was a good idea to propose a special training for travel agents, because we had a lot of reports of people with disabilities saying, okay, I want to travel, I want to go somewhere. I went to the travel agency, and travel agent said, sorry, I can't do anything for you because I don't know what you need. So I refuse to take the risk to send you somewhere, and you have what we call a bad touristic adventure or experiment. So we focused on the Article 30 of the CRPD, and this article says that society has to ensure that people with disability can participate in recreational tourism and leisure activities on an equal basis of others. It also says that people with disabilities have access to tourism services, sports, cultural and leisure facilities. They have access to tourism. It doesn't mean that they have to have equal access to tourism. This is something really important, and it means that what is important is equal access to the touristic experience, what you can feel, what you can emotionally feel when you are experimenting tourism. This is really, really important because, in fact, it goes a bit, how to say that? It's a bit contrary to what we always hear, for example, the importance of accessibility. Sometimes you don't need accessibility to have a good touristical experiment. Some basic are important, but sometimes you can do without a full accessibility and live a great experiment. Where is it? Okay. So in Switzerland, the CRPD is reinforced by a federal law on the elimination of discrimination against people with disability. And the legal framework in Switzerland focuses more on prohibiting discrimination than on promoting equality or equity. And the Swiss Federal Supreme Court adopted a restrictive definition of what is discrimination. It means that it's really hard to implement accessible tourism in Switzerland because we don't have any legal document to enforce that. So there is today there is still in Switzerland a real lack of promotion of accessible offers, fragmented informations, and above all, a lack of specific training for the tourist professionals. So we are far away from a full application of the CRPD at the moment in Switzerland. Oops, oh sorry, yeah. The small survey we conducted has been done on, with 30 travel agents in the Western Switzerland, and all the agents, almost all, said the key obstacle in offering accessible tourism solutions for travel agents is a lack of knowledge, first. Then it's a fear of not meeting expectation, a general reluctance to engage due to potential responsibility for a failed consumer experience, and last but not least, a kind of incompatibility with the travel agent's business model. You know that travel agents are paid with the commission they took from the trips they sell. And the commission is covering about 1-2 hours of work. When you have a client with disability who arrives, it means that the travel agent will have to work something like 20, 25, 30 hours, to organize a trip. So it's not paid. So there is a really huge problem. This problem today is not solved. Maybe we discussed with travel agent, we were thinking of an extra tax that could be taken on every sold trips, a kind of solidarity tax that could finance the special needs of information for the disabled, but that's not in force at the moment. So this pushes us to the conclusion that there is a need for a specific training program for the travel agents beside the problem of business model there. And we decided to build that small training program, but we wanted it to be fully inclusive. So concerned users, those with physical, sensory and intellectual disabilities, have in this training to play an active role in the design of the training and in the teaching of the training. So we created a work group made up of 3 people with reduced mobility, 2 people with sensory disability, and 2 people with intellectual disability. And this group has been joined by 2 travel agents, and we tried to create this training program. And by creating this training program, we immediately thought that it could have been good to develop a kind of tool, a checklist that could be useful for travel agents, a checklist that we will discuss after. Sorry. So this checklist is supposed to help travel agents to ensure that the needs of clients with disabilities are considered at every stage of the trip planning and in the delivery of the good, which is the trip, in fact. This checklist has 7 chapters, 7 themes. It's inspired mainly by the user's experiment, means the people with disability, and we checked that it is fully compatible with the ISO norm on tourism. First chapter, it's what we call the initial inquiry. It means that the travel agent has first to ask if the client has special health condition needing specific attention. It's logical. That's an entry door, okay? And then he has to ask the client if he has any specific accessibility requirement, because it's not always linked to the health condition, okay? And then we thought it would be much more simple to describe the category of person with disability with the international categories of the airline companies, because it's not a good idea that travel agents have to know the diagnostic of the people and so, because they don't know what it is. It's not important. So we focused on the idea that there is someone who is with medical assistance, on a stretcher, wheelchair but being able to walk a bit, wheelchair without being able to walk a bit, fully assisted in wheelchair, blind, deaf blind, or intellectual disability. Then, at the first stage, the travel agent also have to inquire about the use of mobility aids, wheelchair, scooter, walkers, and so on and so on. And then inquire about type of battery of the electric mobility aids, because it's really important, especially if you are flying. Is it a dry cell battery? Is it a liquid battery? Is it a lithium battery? This is really important. Then inquire about mobility aid dimensions, large, height, yeah, and the weight, and foldable or not. This can change the configuration of a trip. Discuss medical needs. Do he need extra oxygen, dialysis, medication, injection? These kind of things are also important to know in advance. Checks the presence of service animal. This is also something important, because sometimes it's too late when just 2 days before going on holiday, we discover that there will be a service animal, you know. Check for dietary requirement, allergy, medical, even religious dietary. Check for climate variation, adaptability of the client, resistance to the sun, heat, humidity. I could ask cold, wind, snow, because I'm from Switzerland, yeah. And check for the presence of a personal assistant that will travel with the client with disability. This is the first initial inquiry. With this, you have already an image of your client, and you have an image of what are the basic needs he will have. Second step, transportation. First, confirm that airline, train, bus, or cruise lines have accessible policies. Then arrange the wheelchair assistance at the airport at station. Verify the seating agreements, if the seating agreement arrangement is suited for the client's need. Check the possibility for clients to transfer or sit on a standard vehicle chair. Not everyone can transfer from the wheelchair to a normal chair. And then ensure that there will be an accessible transfer with a vehicle, adapted vehicle, ramp, lift, and so on. Then accommodation. The accommodation is quite huge, it's clear. The agent has to confirm the accessible room, rolling shower, grab bar, wide doors, space to move, these kind of things. And then he has to check if the client has special needs, because you have the standard, but sometimes you need something special in addition. And then check the availability of additional technical aids, such as lifting accessories, shower wheelchair, communication aids, and so and so. For sure, check for the presence of elevator, available and accessible pathway. Because when you go on a trip, on holiday, it's not to stay in your accessible room. It's also to have activities outside the room. So it's important to move in the environment. Check the accessibility of additional bathroom. Why that? Because it quite often happens that the bathroom in the accessible room is in fact not really accessible. Maybe just because of the transfer from the wheelchair to the seat of the bathroom is on the wrong side. So having another bathroom accessible in the building make a bigger chance to have good condition for transfer. I am quite a huge globetrotters in wheelchair. I've visited more than 35 countries, and quite often I cannot use the bathroom of the accessible room. But I know that I can go in another bathroom in the lobby or in the restaurant, and this suits me. That's enough. Check the accessibility of the other accommodation infrastructures, because it's important to be outside the room. So bar, restaurant, lobby, garden, terrace, swimming pool, fitness, spa, all other services, all these are important. Verify the hotel staff training in welcoming and serving people with special needs. This is important, especially for people with intellectual disabilities, but also for people with blind or deaf, because the communication might be a kind of a huge challenge. And verify the emergency procedure, that the emergency procedures are also inclusive for people with disability, because it's really unsafe to know that if something happens in my hotel, and I will be in the list of the victim, because there is nothing prepared to rescue me. And then chapter 4 is the tour activities. Check if excursions are special needs accessible. Confirm availability of sign language interpreters or guide trained in accessibility. Ensure adapted equipment for sports leisure activities, for example, beach wheelchair, these kind of things. Provide a clear information about terrain is in French, sorry, about the geographical environment, distance and potential barriers. Provide a list of accessible activities nearby accommodation. For example, a night market in Thailand that is near from the accommodation and is accessible. That is something interesting to know. Chapter 5 is on the documentation and communication. The idea is that the travel agent has to provide all itineraries and material in accessible format. It might be large print, digital, easy to read, and so and so. Then use a clear, simple language when explaining services. The client are not a technician or specialist in tourism, So it's important to speak a clear and simple language. It's important also in the documentation to confirm the different emergency contact and medical information of the client, and the fact that it's recorded, that we have that somewhere. And also check the different travel insurances to be sure that it covered also the disability-related needs. I will go fast. Chapter 6 is personal assistance. It means only require to check if the person will be with a personal assistant, the need of a local support eventually, and check the condition and availability of the local support. And last chapter is on trip support. It's important to ensure in 24 hours, 7 days assistance contact, because everything can happen. Confirm a local emergency and healthcare facilities that they are accessible. Check for the availability of local breakdown service in case of troubleshooting with technical aids. It happens almost every time that the wheelchair broke in travel. So it's important to know how to be able to repair it. Maintain kind of flexibility in itineraries, and regularly check the client satisfaction to be sure that everything is okay. Isabelle Ducharme, when I met her in 2009 in Hong Kong in a congress, told me a sentence that changed completely my mind. She said, traveling inevitably means accepting a loss of comfort for everyone. That's the case. So what is really interesting in what we created, I think so, is that we create a category for each element and each theme. We have to check if it's essential for the person, comfortable for the person, or can do without. This is the idea. And Henry Miller said, a destination is never a place, but a new way of seeing things. This means that there is also a need, and we discovered that, for a specific training for people with disabilities who intend to travel, because they also have to be prepared on how to travel. And the same group will develop a specific training for that, with also a kind of checklist. I pass really rapidly on that. That's how to plan a trip. And then, we also have the prioritizing needs. Essential comfort can do without, in the client sense too. To conclude, Paulo Coelho said, if you think adventure is dangerous, I suggest you try a routine. It's deadly, yeah? So travel and adventure are possible for people with disability, but there is a need for specific training for travel agents, and there is also a need for specific training for the users concerned. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pierre, and I'm sorry I have to keep it short. We're moving on to our last but not least presenter, Francesca.
Okay, thank you very much. I try to be very concise because I'm the last speaker of the last talk of the first day, so I'm tired myself. I can't imagine the public. So, my name is Francesca Carmagnola. I am the director of ETS Academy Turismo Piemonte. I take some minutes to explain what ETS Academy is, because it is a quite new educational institution in Italy, and it is important to understand how we conceive in our courses accessibility, especially in dealing with tourism. It's important to understand what are the characteristics of the training in ETS. So, Okay, so ETS Academy were established in 2010 as a tertiary vocational training aligned with European systems which define ETS or educational systems like ETS several years ago, but we are in Italy, so we take a bit longer to come to what the other come. ETS Academy operates as a participatory foundations, which is a particular form of private body used by public bodies to carry out activities of public interest with involvement of private partners. So basically we are paid by, we are formed by private companies, paid by Europe in part, paid by the minister in other part, but we carry out public activities. So it's very complicated. The aim of ETS is to develop new skills in areas of technology which are considered as strategic for the development of our countries. Courses are typically held in collaboration with companies, university, research centers, local authorities and institutions. What is important of ETS is that ETS Academy enables people to enter the world of work immediately. So it is a very different approach from university. University is able to give you a deep knowledge, but probably it teaches you more, let's say, theoretical aspects in several fields. ETS give you the practice. Sometimes I say to my students, the dirty which you need now to work. So this is the main goal of ETS. Usually ETS programs last 2 years. They have a compulsory at least 30% of hours of traineeship in companies. An important aspect is that teachers comes at least from the 50% from industry, which allows ETS to give content which are always updated and always aligned with what the labor market needs. Apprenticeship is a kind of contract which is possible. ETS programs combine classroom instruction, so typical lessons, with hands-on experience, including also internship in companies. Once a student has completed the course in ETS, receives a higher technical diploma, which is a 5 level of the European qualification framework. In Italy, we have 6 technological areas which are considered strategic for the development of the countries, for the economical development of the countries. So we goes from energy efficiency, sustainable mobility, new technologies of life, new technologies for made in Italy, information and communication technologies, of course, and innovative technology for goods, cultural activities, and tourism. So it comes to tourism. ETS in cultural heritage and tourism covers about 11 regions in Italy. We have in all our region, you can see in the picture those regions highlighted in yellow, which are the regions where we have an ETS in the tourism field active. We have about 100 active courses delivered by 14 foundations in more than 50 locations all over Italy. The goal of ETS in the tourism area is to respond to the demand of a constantly evolving market, to foster innovation, sustainability, and promotion of our artistic, cultural, and tourism heritage, which is, I think, is quite well known that in Italy is very important. It is something that is very relevant to the economy of the country. Coming to my foundation, or the foundation I represent, ETS Academy Turismo Piemonte. We were created in 2016. Since then we had 1,000 of students. We have 4 locations in Piemonte: Torino, Bra, which is in Langhe, and Novara, which is close to Milano. I say Milano because everybody knows Milano, so close to Milano, but it is in Piedmont. Since 2016, we have graduated about 700 of people, and we work with 300 of companies. I will skip this slide, but just to say that we have some funding partners among institutions, local authorities, university, research center, and so on. We have also a lot of participating partners, other company trainings, some high school, other university, and so on. And among these participating partners, we have the consulta per le persone in difficoltà. What is the advantage and the added value of having Consulta per le persone in difficoltà as our partner? This allows us to create a collaboration aimed at promoting inclusion, accessibility, and hospitality in the tourism industry, and in particular, since the very first year, training in our courses, thanks to the Consulta, was taught and tailored according to specific programs in our courses. So we had a shared goals, that is to raise awareness about accessible tourism, to encourage inclusive culture and values, and most of all, to train professionals and the future workers and educate students on the importance of accessible tourism, fostering a culture of inclusivity and welcoming hospitality. This is very important because we know that in Europe about 38% of tourists seek for accessible tourism, and that percentage was the 10% some years ago. In Italy, we are 60 million of people. Among those, 10 million of people, so 1 out of 6, look for accessible tourism. Not only disabled people, but also people over 65, which they have, of course, special needs. So I think, and we think that train the future professionals in the tourism is something that deals with also with economic matter, but it gives a great response to our country and to our people. And I'm proud to say that our ETS is the first ETS in Italy that includes accessible tourism as a specific topic in the courses, not because it was compulsory by the region, because it was not compulsory at that time, but because we believed and we believe in that. How we teach accessibility in our courses? Well, we deliver a mix of theory and practical lessons. So we combine lectures, hands-on workshop, and project activities. So students can develop the knowledge and skill to create and promote tourism services that are accessible to all, including seniors, people with disabilities, families with children, and individuals with special needs. Moreover, we include our students in real work simulation. So, for instance, you can see 2 pictures of our students in Bra, so in Leeuwen. They take part in wheelchair experience and in blindfolded paths. So they can experience on their skin what is the experience of living of people with disabilities. We have also hands-on experience with companies. And these are very valuable because companies are engaged in students group activities, and all these activities are assessed at the end of each training by a panel of industry experts. Each program starts with an introductory phase of the general concepts of disability, of the story of disability, and of inclusive tourism, and it then moves to explore the key aspects of the sector of the specific study path, of course. The program also offers an overview of those national and international laws in terms of accessibility, and explore also accessibility standards in relation to different types of courses. These are the courses we have at the moment. So it goes from tourism marketing and event manager, sport event specialist, destination manager, hospitality manager, event manager, social media manager for the tourism, and sport management. Just to give you, I go very fast, short overview of what is the sustainability and accessibility topic in our courses. For instance, in the course Destination Manager, starting, as I said, from history and regulation, we teach them to understand disability and specific needs to promote a tourism package that takes all requirements into account. We included the importance of hospitality, so knowing how to welcome customers with specific needs and disabilities in an inclusive way. We have also a specific focus on communication, so how to communicate accessibility and usability through different channels of communication. Then we adopt a tool of the Turismabile, which we know what it is because it's a regional project of Turismo Torino, which is a self-assessment form. Every structure can feel to understand to what extent is accessible or not. And we give also good practices and example of accessibility and so on. We have in all our courses, we try to have good testimonies from people with specific needs in order also to make them interact with students. For instance, in this course, we had Simone Dionigi. I'm a young man with a motor disability, Sergio Prelato, which is the Italian representative of the Union of Blind and Visually Impaired, and a deaf architect, Consuelo Agnesi, which is quite famous. Oops, sorry, go way around. Well, for instance, in the course Hospitality Manager, apart from the topic history and regulation, we have, of course, for instance, the behavioral analysis of tourists with disabilities in choosing a destination, which is quite important. Examples of tourism for all promotion, which is anyway important. And in this course in particular, we had also collaboration between Ascombra and Casa Pride to include also a course titled Safe Place, Introduction to LGBTQIA+ world, and inclusive language, because also that one is accessibility. And also our students took part in several experiences with the different tourist facilities and office, with particular attention to welcoming guests with disabilities. In the sport management, I just want to highlight that we had a specific focus on sport and disability, and the role of disability manager in sport events, which is a quite new role, but it's becoming very important. And also we provide examples of sports for all event promotion and involvement of experts and testimonials. In that course, for instance, we had Roberto Lazzaro, which is a Paralympic athlete specialized in high rifle shooting, who won the gold medal at World Championship in Lehman. So our students took the chance to interview Roberto and get inspired by him, and also understand what might be the difficulty of a Paralympic athlete. I can skip this one. Okay, I just want to conclude by saying, by reasoning over the challenges in accessible tourism. Since now we have an experience of 10 years of teaching accessible tourism, so we can say that still remains some challenges. First of all, there is still a significant awareness gap between what student and industry can understand about disabilities. So this lack should be covered, the gap should be covered. Then the field requires a multidisciplinary knowledge. So to design truly inclusive services, we need to combine skills in service design, technology, regulations, and communication. Another important issue is that laws, national and international, are constantly evolving. So we need to train our future professionals in be updated of the changes in the laws. and it's not very simple. It's not that much simple. Moreover, there is often limited practical experience, so students can rarely have the chance to participate in internship or real-world projects focused on accessible tourism. And finally, another challenge is related to technology and infrastructure, because many institutions still lack adequate facilities and assistive technologies for hands-on training. So I think that addressing these challenges may be crucial if we want to prepare a new generation of professionals capable of building a truly inclusive tourism industry.
Thank you very much, Francesca. I know that we have been running a bit late and we're the last session of the day, and we have been chasing our tails all day today, having started a bit late. But I just wanted to ask if anybody has a question for somebody from the panel. Any questions? No? I think it was all, yes? Sure. Sure, Ryan, go ahead.
Pierre, have you had a rollout of the checklist and the process around the new travel agents arrangement? Is somebody piloting it?
We are planning to publish it soon, and we will begin the first training for the travel agent normally in the end of November. Yeah, so and the checklist will be designed in a more one-sheet document with a cross case. You can cross, it's done, it's done, it's done, and so. But yeah, it's not published at the moment.
Do you anticipate, it feels like a lot of work, and you identified yourself that the commission is usually 2 hours or...
Yeah, we know. We know that it brings a lot of work, and this will be the most important problem, is how to implement this approach in the business plan, the business model of the travel agent. And this is why we are dealing also with the regional association of travel agent to try to influence the way they calculate the commission, and maybe to add an extra tax, solidarity tax, that could finance the extra job, you know.
Sorry, if I may interject into that, I think once the initial, from a tour operator's perspective, once the initial checklist has been created and they have identified 5 or 6 different areas that they would like to sell as products, then it won't be as time consuming. Maybe. Because they'll know that these requirements are met, yeah, and it's just a quick fix between the individual and the destination.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Very, very interesting question. Thank you very much for that, Ryan. Very interesting. Anybody else? Okay.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Oh, sorry.
Congratulations, everybody, for your work. First of all, I just want to know, because in Creole, our rules for to do some training is to the trainer have to live the situation. So all our trainer are in handicap person. So I just want to hear about what do you think about that?
Me?
Everybody.
Okay. Okay.
Somebody else
Yeah,
would like
I can go on quickly. For me, it's evident that it's important, but that's why we created that group of people who take part to the design of the training and will be part of the teaching too. And there are people with intellectual disabilities in that group too. It means that people with disabilities can also be trainers, you know. The only restriction I could see is that if you sell a training, you have to have a high quality, because your client who pays for the training wants to have something. So
Look into
this is the problem we have to check each time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Somebody else would like to answer this question? Yeah. Ryan? You would like to have a word as well, Marco?
Yes.
I would say that there are people within Parks Victoria who have disabilities. Some of them identify as disabled, other people don't. So they are on the practical side of things implementing some of the accessibility upgrades. Also, there's a Disability Advisory Council, which is a body made up of people with different disabilities that advise at Parks Victoria, and they regularly review the document so that it is fit for purpose for people with different disabilities. But I think that's really important, and I think that folds definitely into the idea of disability employment and empowering people to be in the workplace to bring that lived experience. Yeah.
Yes, and beyond that, some of the projects that we are looking into are also about employability in the leisure or tourism or event sector. For people with disabilities, but not because of their disabilities or even their lived experience, but just because of their talents. I mean, even say despite their disabilities, right? So that they just fit in, and then it's normalized that they're part of this process. And there's still a lot of resistance and ignorance to be to be combated. So it's a long process, but we're working on it.
Francesco?
I think that maybe you're right, but I can reply that, for instance, oncologists has not the cancer, no, but they are experts, they have studies, and they know how to deal with that. I think that the most important is to combine examples and testimony of people with disabilities with experts of how to deal, for instance, in tourism with disabilities. That's why, for instance, in our courses we use teachers from the Consulta per le persone in difficoltà. So all our teachers of accessible tourism comes from there. So they are very expert. They are not disabled, but we exploit also testimony of disabled people. So you use these solutions. Yeah.
Okay, well, I think some very interesting concepts have come up as a result of this conversation, which is really what education and training should be about. Unless we have any other comments, anybody? Okay, so thank you all very much for participating, and have a lovely afternoon, late evening. Thank you.
Thank you.